Okay, I can't hear you.
Oh,
Wildman, you're in 2 groups.
Oh.
you hear me now?
I
We can hear you. We can hear you in the finance group.
Hello?
Those of you who are left, are you having trouble getting document to get into your groups?
Let's see, Chris.
I think, Jason, you might be in both groups as well.
You have to
Actually, I'm
out of
still in the
the-
main meeting. I think that was my problem. Is that better?
Yeah, I
Okay,
think so.
Christopher, maybe on the bottom of your screen, is there a microphone there that has a hash mark through it that you can click on that we could maybe hear you?
My microphone's on.
Chris, your mic is on for the
No, you
finance
know, if your
group,
volume is turned up.
but you're not on for, you're in 2 different videos right now.
Oh, okay,
Actually,
sorry.
we still have the icon. We still have the icon.
Got it.
There you go.
I am so sorry.
Yeah, no, I
I'm
don't
not
know
used
if you're
to this.
trying.
Sorry. You got it. I thought I left the other one. Sorry.
I take
That's
back
okay.
what I said. It was all Chris's fault.
You got it.
All right, Mary, oh, you're already recording. Great.
I've recorded all of that, yes. Hello,
Blackmail.
everyone. Yeah. Do we know if everyone is present?
Looks
Are
like
we
we're
waiting?
Missing a handful of people, right? There's
Right.
7 on here, and we're supposed to have 2, 4,
We're
6.
missing Brittany,
Brittany's not able to attend.
Courtney Bryant. I didn't
And Christy
see-
Miller.
And Christy Miller. I didn't see Courtney in the bigger group either.
Okay. So maybe those 3 are absent then.
Yeah.
All right. So does everyone have the links? Because we're going to be looking at a couple different documents. So we have the SWOT summary that we worked on the last time we came together. That's one document. We have the thought exchange results, and that's another document. And then we have the document where we can be recording what our potential big ideas are. And so I just want to make sure that everyone has ability to view those documents as we work together, because it'll be awkward for me to share all of those screens when you want to glance at the other documents. Does that make sense? So I'm happy to be the scribe and take notes for tonight. When we resume in the whole group meeting at 7:45 or so, we will be taking turns sharing out what our big ideas are for each of our groups. I'd like to ask for a volunteer to be the spokesperson for our group. No one?
I'll do it.
Thank you, Chris.
No problem.
All right, so just to give you a sense of our roadmap for this time together, we've already taken care of step 1, thank you. We have a reporter or spokesperson, Chris Wildman, and we'll then take a look at the SWOT analysis to review what our thoughts were the last time we came together. We'll then take a look at the thought exchange report, and it shows the results for all of those individuals who chose to participate in the thought exchange specific to finances. And then step 4, we'll get into this discussion about our big ideas. Ultimately, we're going to populate this section. I'm not sharing, am I? Ultimately, we're going to populate we're going to populate a table that will show what we believe are our big ideas. But in advance of that, we're just going to brainstorm. We're going to brainstorm what potentially could be the big ideas. Can you see that?
We don't see your screen.
You don't?
No.
Okay. We'll get there. Better?
Yes.
Okay. So when I take our notes initially, I'm just going to record our brainstorming thoughts down below here. And after we feel that we have exhausted our ideas for brainstorming, then we'll revisit each of these potential big ideas and we'll filter through those potential ideas and discern which we believe are the top 3. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's our strategy for our work together tonight. So we'll start by taking a look at the SWOT analysis. So this should look familiar. Not only was it our work from the last time we came together, but Rich also showed this in his presentation tonight. So for our strengths, we had indicated we believe that the financial recognition status through the ISB financial profile designation was a strength. We felt that the fund balance level that the district has maintained over the last several years was a strength. That we have been disciplined and created a balanced budget over the last several years, also a strength. Of course, that's created some surpluses. And we considered that the return on investment, the ROI, given these finances and the exemplary and commendable schools, represented a strength for the district as well. In the area of weaknesses, we felt that our long-term debt limit is a weakness. The district's ability to follow the facility plan and do a refresher and update was also a weakness. We also described that the tax base being largely residential was a weakness compared to some other school districts where they have a greater portion of their tax base that might be commercial property. And we also felt that a system to monitor and challenge our assumptions was a potential weakness. Opportunities, we saw that the long-term debt levy would be opening up in future years, and we see that as an opportunity. Our enrollment is declining overall, and so that can be an opportunity for smaller class sizes as well as adjustments to staffing. We do know that we have subgroups that are increasing. Our early childhood population, our EL, and our low-income populations are increasing. We see that as an opportunity. An opportunity to partner with other taxing bodies to collectively achieve similar goals as partners. We see that as an opportunity. An opportunity to develop a robust sustainability plan from a financial perspective, and an opportunity to advocate with our legislative bodies, be it local, county, or state. And then potential threats to our financial goals would be programmatic changes that are necessary due to student needs or required. Unfunded mandates, of course, that's a challenge. The evidence-based funding is currently unstable with uncertainty about new money being added to each fiscal year, especially important because we are a Tier 1 district. Other threats, again, this relates to potential legislative changes that come from Springfield, a potential property tax freeze, can be a threat, and a pension cost shift is another possible threat. Any questions or comments about our work from last time? Okay. We will then take a look at the results from the thought exchange. So the question that was posed in the thought exchange was, in your opinion, what goals are important in CCSD 46 over the next 5 years in the area of finance? There were 20 people who participated and 18 thoughts were shared. And the responses to those thoughts from the 20 people totaled 244 ratings. So that's kind of interesting data to look at the participation. Then the results are filtered by those with the highest star ratings. So you can track that as noted here. So the thought that had the highest star rating of 4.1 was develop a clear and transparent financial reporting model, and so on. And so I think, can I ask the group if you've had a chance to take a look at these results yet, or we can give you a few minutes to read it on your own?
I'd like a few minutes. I have not looked at them yet.
Okay, let's take 5 minutes. What time is it now? 6. Let's come back at 7:05 as a group. Take a few minutes to read and digest.
Mary, were you just talking to us?
Yes. Let's take a few minutes to, thank you. Let's take a few minutes to, now that you've had a chance to skim through the 16 thoughts received through the thought exchange, let's spend a few minutes talking about these and digesting it a little bit before we start to assimilate this with the ideas from the SWOT analysis to identify our big ideas. Since this is the first time we've really looked at these thoughts, I'm curious from the group, what of these did you resonated with you? What of these did you find surprising? What of these were you intrigued by? What of these would you be interested in discussing here in our small group in greater depth?
So Mary, one of the things that came to my mind as I read, because there was two different ones about staff living within the district. We're creating a policy to recruit staff who are residents. I just happened to be running a report for the union today that includes addresses. So I just quickly pulled that up and pulled through that data. It looks like, based off my quick calculations, 30% of our staff live in Grays Lake and Haynesville, with close to another 150 people between Round Lake Beach, Lake Villa. Now I can't tell you what school district they would go to because you have to pull up the streets and everything, but
Right.
so I can't tell you that, but Grays Lake and Haynesville account for 30% of our staff. And that's just for our bargaining unit staff members. That doesn't include another 50 people who would not be in the bargaining units.
Okay, that's intriguing.
That's interesting. It seems difficult enough to find, the right candidate for the right position, not considering where they live. I don't know, that sounds great in theory, but Chris, in practicality, right? I'm not even sure how you would write a policy that would, even encourage the preferential.
You look at everything out there, and I can tell you, you take a look at all the research out there right now about teacher candidates coming out of colleges. I can tell you the teacher shortage is real, just from having to hire people. So if we're trying to shrink our geographic area, and now we're really handcuffing ourselves.
And so,
can I just talk about this? This is the 16th of 16. You're talking about establish a policy that encourages hiring.
Well, there was also number 5. I think it is.
Number 5.
About
teacher salary.
Can't live. No, on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th item: find ways to match teacher salary. And I agree. We do need that'd be great. Quality teachers can't afford to live local.
Sure.
There's a less sense of ownership too.
And so I realize the challenges of creating a hiring policy that is specific to people living in the district. However, it might be information that we share about our staff, on a dashboard. Did you know that 30% of our staff live in Grays Lake and Haynesville, or within the district boundaries, and whatever words we want to use? So maybe that's just that would be information that would be interesting to share. Did you know? And did you know that X percentage of our staff have a master's? X percentage of our staff have more than X number of years experience. So maybe sharing some of that factual information on our website through a dashboard of sorts might satisfy that interest without needing to create a policy or a goal.
Or even, what about like living within a certain radius of the district. Because I live just east of 45, so I'm in Gurnee. But because Gurnee doesn't really have a downtown area, we like to go hang out at Grays Lake and do the farmers market and things like that. So I think even if you're not in the actual district boundaries, if you're close enough, you do come into Grays Lake. And, you know, I kind of consider that my town because Gurnee just has a lot of traffic. It doesn't
Chris
have
is
that.
Chris is the director of HR. Is it legal to restrict hiring based on where people live?
I would, again, residency is not a protected class, but like where you live is not a protected class, but it sure doesn't bode well for recruitment.
You'd have to make exceptions for, I can just tell, Chris, you know what we went through to try and hire over at the Early Childhood Center. I mean, our teachers have to have certification in early childhood and special ed early childhood. They have to have their ESL endorsement. I mean, it's a lot. We are probably the most certified educated group in the district. So I think it would be difficult to restrict that by residency for other areas as well.
I think the other group is probably going to come up with a goal that's something along the lines of hiring the most best qualified teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a better goal for another group.
Mm-hmm.
And our group should be focusing on the top two, which are financial models and a financial committee, which is basically transparency. The top two are 4.1 and 3.8, saying that they believe that we don't have a clear and transparent financial reporting model. So we're hearing pretty loud and clear that they want better reporting, and they want a finance committee to be able to hear how we budget and how we put together our budget. So that's
right.
what the community is saying in the thought exchange.
You know, I saw that similarly because if you are successful, if the district has a goal to establish a finance committee, many of these topics can be topics that would be discussed and come from the finance committee. So what is the preferred financial reporting model? What strategies is the district interested in investing in for teacher retention or health and well-being of teachers? Where does the district need to invest their funds in order to maximize returns? Accurate projections, all of those topics, which are, I think, some of the top 5 or 6 in this thought exchange, can all fall under the umbrella of conversation topics for finance committee.
100% agree. I think that would probably make a good goal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so coming out of the last collective bargaining experience we had, that was one of the things that we worked on doing because we felt like we weren't communicating good information both to the bargaining units and to the public. You know, there was all sorts of issues around why that was, but it's interesting. I read that very first one and I thought to myself, I come from a corporate finance background, and I thought, you know, the fund balance accounting isn't the clearest way to communicate financial information in my mind. So I jotted down just in the 7 minutes we were away how I thought, you know, our profit and loss statement should look like. Then I went to the website and I found a booklet that Mary put together ahead of the budget presentation, and it looked a lot like that pro forma P&L that I jotted down on a piece of paper. So I'm not sure that the problem isn't that these financial reports are hard to understand or easy or not easy to read. I think there's a couple things. I think it's not prominently featured on our website. So it took me, and I, in theory, know where to find this information readily. It took me about 5 different misclicks to find that information. And then the other problem is that the information is not contextualized in a way that makes sense to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking through, you know, what kind of context would be helpful for someone to understand these things. And I'm thinking of benchmarking. I'm thinking of other ways that people think of how we're spending our money. And it's human nature to kind of compare to surrounding districts, even though there's differences and there's some risks in doing that, right? If you were to benchmark it as a percent of revenue or as a per pupil expenditure, if those are the ways you're going to contextualize, we really need to think about those things. But I agree that a finance committee would be a great place to hash out these kinds of things.
I think when I read clear and transparent financial reporting model, it says budget to me. The community needs to know what our priorities are and what we value and where we're going to be spending our money. And if we're very clear in that, saying we want full day kindergarten, we want all this, we want to have a guaranteed and viable curriculum, or we want to be reducing class sizes, or we're doing whatever we want to do, that's the time to put the cost with it and let the board and the community make a decision about whether that's of value to them. So that when I see transparent reporting model, I don't literally always think it's the financial reports. It's literally how does the school district make financial decisions which tie to the mission and vision of the district? That's what I look at it as, and that's the budget. It's the budget presentation, it's the budget document, and it's all the conversations that go into having a priority-based budget process. So do we have enough staff to do X, Y, Z that we wish to do for the year? That would be discussed at a finance committee. That's the how, but the why is why we're doing it, because that's the budget. So I kind of look at it as budget transparency. If you were looking for a strategy, it's budget transparency. It's, does the community know what we're going to do for the next year or what we're going to do for the next 5 years? And if you say to somebody in Mariano's, board member comes up to say, hey, what are we doing in the next 5 years? Oh, we have a plan, right? That's really what I'm saying. Where are we today and where are we going? That's what I look at that as. And I don't know how exactly to put that in a goal right now, but that's kind of where I'm thinking.
I think even more than that, it's a communication strategy specifically for the finances of the district.
Yeah.
Everything that we're talking about here, that's all related to communication or lack of
they're both.
communication.
The top two are both communication issues.
Yeah.
I think you almost have to separate the goals and then the communication of the goals. Because I agree. I mean, I think that what we're hearing here is communication. And I guess, so the cynic in me is a bit like, so Jason, I agree with what you're saying about the finance committee, but like how many people attend the finance committee? I mean, so you really need, so while the goals are important, I mean, we almost need to like shift the communication over to the communications team and say, you know, this is kind of hitting us, you know, square in the face, but is it the goal of the finance committee or is it the goal of the communications committee?
Well, one of the skill of a good financial person is the ability to communicate financial information. So I think that work belongs in this shop. I do.
Okay. But again, what's the numbers and like how many people are attending that finance committee where this would get
well, that's not the medium though, Trent. That's where the work gets done to figure out where the medium is. You know, it might be on the site in a way. Clearly, this document that I saw for the budget, I mean, it doesn't address everything that Chris was talking about as, you know, what do you value as represented by what's in your budget?
Sure.
But we can be doing a much better job of, you know, updating the community on our financial state, the issues we face. You know, we can talk, you know, some of the things in the SWOT analysis need to be more widely known in the community, right? I'm not sure, Trent, if you were surprised by any of it, but like those issues are, you know, pretty well, I feel like they've been pretty well known by people who have been paying attention for a while.
Right.
But I don't think they're widely known in the community.
Mhm.
No, I would agree.
Well, I don't
with
think
that.
they're widely understood, even if they are known.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the complexity of school financing is,
Right.
you know, that's a
So
huge
let's-
hurdle to overcome with people.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So I'm thinking about this overlap with communications. And in my last district, or last two districts, we had very intentional communications to the community about district finances. And so we had a community guide for the budget. So it was a 4-page, really nicely done brochure that was mailed and also on the website about the district budget. And then mid-year, so that would be fall, let's say. And then mid-year, we would have another communications issued to the community about district finances. And that would be more about goals and alignment and that forward-looking into the next several years. So as the district was making decisions about programming, let's say converting to full-day kindergarten, I know the district did that, but for example, that type of programming, or expansion in ELL, or reduction in class sizes, whatever those investments are, those trade-offs, and conversation about how these initiatives align with district goals, and then what is the cost, and so how are we going to cover that expense? Because we all know there are limited resources, and when it comes to budgeting, it's about making decisions on how you will allocate those resources. So it's a trade-off. You can't have everything. You can do a lot, and you need to make decisions with how to spend what you have. So there are trade-offs, and I think that has the district ever had those kind of broad community targeted communication tools issued and says, hey, this is what we've done, this is where we are, and then this forward-looking, conversation. And there are many channels that we can all use, through social media, the website, or, I hate to say print, but some people might still be connecting to that. And so I do think that this communication about the district, alignment with goals and decision making, how are we making these decisions, what decisions have been made, I think that's key to improving transparency and understanding about the district's sustainability from a financial perspective.
Or even equating like what happens in Springfield with the decisions that the district can or cannot make. I think that would be really transparent to say, look, we wanted to do X, but because of the change in Springfield, and the funding, that's just not possible. I think people would appreciate that level of transparency as well, and maybe that would motivate them to get more involved and advocate on behalf of the district.
A great point too. Initiatives that are in the news, like the fair tax, and every once in a while, property tax freeze issue comes to the fore. Like, we could be more proactive about saying, the deleterious effects that those things could have on our, property tax freeze. What would it mean to you? You might be inclined to support it. Sounds great, but in reality, we're only increasing your taxes by CPI every year.
Yeah, and we talk about those issues when they do come up in board meetings, but as everyone knows, no one goes to board meetings. So definitely there's a need to broadcast it beyond that.
Yep.
Okay. So
as a general comment, I'm kind of surprised there's only 20 people and 18 thoughts. I actually thought there'd be a lot more on financial.
Participants?
Yeah, there's 244 people who've actually rated, but only 20 people actually made a comment. I thought there'd be a lot more.
Yeah, I clicked onto some of the other areas, and they had a lot more comments. I mean, to the extent that I think we're seeing, the vast majority of our comments, and some of the others, they're only seeing, about 50% of the comments because there were just so many.
I think the school finance is one of the things that people get the most upset about, but that most people don't pay attention to.
I think there's a lot of like terminology, like levies and tax bonds and all of those things that unless you deal with that all the time, I come from a family where my mom was a bookkeeper for a school district and I still can't keep it all straight. You know, and just understanding where that money comes from, or the grants, that when you get a grant, it has to be used for specific things. It doesn't just go into a big account that you can then dole out to where, you know, however you want to use it. So I think the transparency, to your point, Jason, like with negotiations, you know, I think negotiating doesn't necessarily understand some of those things either. So I think the transparency would benefit staff as well as the community.
We have a visitor. All
Did you
right.
bring donuts?
Okay. Any other thought exchange ideas that we would like to discuss in our small group?
I did want to talk about the teacher salary and competitiveness factor. I think that's, you know, that's kind of likely to rear its ugly head every 3 years, if not more frequently, right? It's an issue we have. It's something we struggle with because we have more limited resources than some others. I'm not sure what else to say about it, but I don't know how to make it a goal. We're getting back to like a prioritization conversation.
Mhm.
It hurts my heart to know that, you know, that we don't pay our teachers what, you know, they can get in other districts. We love our teachers and we want, you know, them to know how they're valued as indicated by, you know, what we pay them. So I'm not sure what to make, how to make that a goal per se.
Related to that, I wonder if there are other immeasurables. You know, what does Grays Lake District 46 do in relation to staff development that teachers don't get somewhere else? So the plan time, or you know, we have half days and institute days or late start days or whatever we call it. I apologize, I'm not entirely
It's all of those things.
details of
So
that.
you're doing well, Mary. That's swoon column.
No, we have all of those.
All of those things, and I can tell you there's value in creating that collaboration time for teacher groups, for job alikes, to come together and to coach one another and to share best strategies. And there are many other places where you don't get that kind of time, or not to that level. So I'm wondering if there are other ways that we are investing in our staff that are outside of contract salary, that brings value to them in their job and demonstrates how we value their role, how we value what they do for students. And so I maybe we need to kind of change our thinking or add to our thinking about how we address appropriate compensation and investment in teaching staff.
And sometimes people don't realize how good they have it until they leave. For instance, I have 3 teachers that I know that are trying to come back to our district that left last year.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, and those are just 3 that I know of, because they left and the grass wasn't greener.
Right.
Yeah. Well, if I could just go ahead and add, research shows that people don't necessarily find value strictly in money, that there's got to be other reasons for wanting to stay or wanting to leave. And my question would be, to your point, Jason, do we know for sure why people are leaving? In other words, is there a culture climate concern potentially? And or do people maybe not know and or recognize, and do we not remind them often enough in the right ways of how great it is to be a teacher in District 46?
Yeah, I think we're getting back to a communication issue, because I wasn't aware that we had any of those kinds of positives to fall back on in that
Sure.
conversation. So
Yeah.
the fact that it's kind of news to me that we might be providing them with other soft benefits that
Mhm.
other districts don't is news to me, and that's interesting that it's news to me.
Sure. Yep.
I mean, we do have those things, but I mean, to Chris's point, we had 2 staff members leave us last year from my building specifically because of money. One had extraordinarily high student loans. And the other's husband, with the pandemic, lost his job, and she had to go someplace where she could get more money. And yes, both of them are miserable and wish they hadn't have left, but they didn't feel like they had a choice at the time. Now things are changing, and I think both of them have actually applied back to the district. I don't know if that's 2 additional to your 3, Chris, or if
Make
that's
that
included.
4.
Yeah. So, and I would tell them, I said, I'm old. I've been in other places. I know how amazing Grays Lake is.
Yeah.
I said, please don't go. You'll regret it. And sure enough, it didn't take them long to realize that there are things that are more important than salary. But when you're young and you can make more someplace else, it's appealing, unfortunately.
To that point, does anyone know if the district does formal exit interviews of anybody who leaves?
We do. We have
You
a survey that is mailed to them with the opportunity to meet with me as the director of HR.
Oh, got it. Okay, very good, Chris. Yep.
Now, the response rates on that aren't where we would hope they would be, but
Well, with all due respect, maybe it's a process thing then. Maybe you don't want to mail them. Maybe before they walk out the door, they're required to meet with you.
Mhm.
And granted, that's not a big idea. That's a small idea within a system here. But, I think there's something to be said overall for maintaining quality staff.
Yeah. Exactly.
Chris, can I ask, what is our starting salary for new graduates?
on my desk, it's approximately 39.
Okay, the reason I ask is I know the state of Illinois is mandating, I don't know, in a year or 2, that 40,000 is the minimum.
Yeah, we'll be over 40 next year. I think it's a year or 2 before we have to.
Yeah, because Woodland, I know, is going to struggle to get to that number as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we going back to the large group at 7:45 or?
That was the plan. And at this point, Mary, I think we're still heading toward that. In fact, I was just kind of checking in how you're doing. Looks like you got some thoughts down there as far as, potential big ideas.
Right.
And I would say that, if you're close to finishing up with the brainstorming, look to hone more of your big ideas into big ideas.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Very good. I'm going to excuse myself if I may, unless anybody has any other questions. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. No, thank you.
Okay. So I've been taking notes while we've been discussing and have sketched out some of these potential big ideas that have surfaced in our conversation here today. And at this point, before we come together with the large group, we should change our focus somewhat in order to discern what we think might be the top 3. And I realize organizationally, you might see some of these things a little bit differently, and that's okay. But if we were to consider what might be the top 3, we should begin to focus on those 3.
Well, I see establish a finance committee as being the first one and probably important to the success of the next 2, whatever those next 2 might be. That's
Mhm.
my.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, the strive for transparency, 2 and 4 seem fairly similar to me.
Yeah, transparency and communication.
Should I edit that one? Make it all the same? Do
Pardon me?
you want me to edit that one? Make it all the same thing?
Sure.
2 and 4? I'll do it.
And the third big idea? I might suggest that it relates to this conversation we had here about financial decision-making and alignment with goals. What does the group think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the teacher salary and competitiveness could fall into that bucket, right? We're talking about
Mhm.
priorities. We're talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, I think once you start talking about priorities, everything's on the table.
Mhm.
So that would include staffing, it would include capital needs, it would include curriculum, it's everything. But it's laying out all the options and making a prioritization, if you will.
Thank you.
No problem.
The why important seems so obvious. I don't know. Maybe we can skip that column for now and talk about by when.
Yeah, I know when I was squawking about wanting a finance committee and there was some upheaval in the business office, we talked about when we had our permanent CSBO. Hi, Chris Wildman.
Mhm.
So how long, Chris, would it take to get a finance committee up and running after July 1?
Not that long, because we're just going to give you what information we have and we're going to start from there. So I would think in the end of the first quarter after that.
So
That-
October.
So September 30?
Yeah.
October 1? Sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Give us that extra day, Mary. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll need it.
Chris will have to file the budget, so he'll need that.
If I can just interject, we're going to extend your time until 8 o'clock. We're going to meet back at 8 o'clock.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
And considering that the other 2 things probably will be some of the work of that finance committee, wouldn't the next 2 be necessarily after?
Not necessarily. I mean, you could. And part of the transparency and communication is letting people know that we are going to be starting a serious finance committee, laying out what the goals of that committee are and that sort of thing, and advertising, for lack of a better term, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
But that's it's all of a piece, really. And part of that rollout, if you want to call it that, is also including maybe a brief overview of what our current financial decision-making process is, and how it aligns with our goals, where we are now, where we are looking to go, and where we want to be. And I think you can tie all three of those together just using the transparency communication part of it.
I think the third one is the roadmap. It's it's how we get there, right? It's the finance committee is going to be there for the board and the community, whoever shows up, because we know that not everyone can make the meeting. But it's the ability for the board to have some oversight and some planning and involvement in that process. And then that third one is really kind of like, hey, this is the plan. So it's also monitoring and planning, again, financial decision making.
Just
The budget, I guess.
Just so you're aware, Chris, I believe Jason has been doing some research and looking at other school districts to see how their finance committee is structured. So as you know, some are board committees, some are superintendent committees, some have community involvement, some don't. So I just so you're aware that those sort of considerations, I believe, are still on the table. Jason, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so that work I did was more than a year ago and a pandemic ago. I'd have to check my notes on that stuff, but yeah, it's all on the table.
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
Right, and frequency of meeting and all of that. So, in terms of financial decision making, alignment with goals, I'm really kind of pondering the by when. And so, when I came into the district and was helping out as an interim, and then COVID hit March 13th, it was create a budget that for COVID, we have no idea when we're going to be open, when we're going to be closed. And, it was really a different structure under which to create a budget and to make decisions. And so now that we will be turning the page on that and really getting back to more formalized decision-making structure, and Chris Wildman being new coming into the district, I'm thinking about the budget that will be approved by the board by September 30th, and whether or not, this idea about the decision-making and even the transparency and communication, is it, if I were Chris, I'd feel that it's too much to put on for this particular budget that's approved in September.
I'm going to need a year. I'm going to need a year to implement that. Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's why I bring it up, because I don't want there to be any surprises, but from a practical sense and knowing what it's going to take for Chris when he comes in, and picking up from a COVID year, it was still some unknowns. Anyway, just for discussion.
Mary, you're a saint for saying that, because it's going to take time to build that process and bring everyone on board with that. Not everyone has been through a zero-based prioritized budget process where you sit down and say, hey, what do you need for next year? And when you ask people that who've never been asked that, they say, well, don't you just give me your budget? No, what do you need next year? And then you start to have those challenging discussions with building leadership and department leaders, because you're making them own their budget and you're making them think about what they need for the following year. And if you tie it back to goals, it helps a lot, especially if you've got some long-term strategic goals that you're trying to work on. So definitely need a year on that one. But that would be a nice one with the finance committee to kind of check in quarterly on that, how we're building towards that. That kind of, there's actually a nice flow to this, because the first one is create the finance committee. Second one is to start to create some trust and understanding with that finance committee. And third one is building the whole process really within a year. So it actually flows quite well.
And one idea I have related to the transparency and communication as a starting point is after the audit's presented for fiscal year 21, that factual information might be the first endeavor in the area of communication. So how do we simplify it and create improved understanding of what is the district's financial situation? So, again, Chris, I defer to you. you'll be, steering the ship, but it might be interesting January 1 after the audit. And even if it's a smaller version of, what communication might be as it's further developed, it could be a really good starting point or jumping off point.
Jason, you might recall that I think you asked me this in my interview. You said, when's the best time to kind of talk financials? And I said January, February, because the levy's finished, you're halfway through the year, and you're kind of starting to have that look forward, and Chris is starting to think about staffing for next year and all these other good things. So I think January would be a nice sweet spot that we could have a deep dive into the financial position of the district. Does that sound good?
It does. If I'm around by then. There's an election next week. I don't know if you'd heard.
No changes, please. Just stick around.
This is clearly not the time for this sort of thing, but it's just some thoughts I had around some of the second item. As you guys were talking about what that transparency communication would look like, I started envisioning some sort of a dashboard. You guys were talking about making these things more understandable, just something to contextualize everything for people. Just a dashboard of key metrics about, the things that, if we're in, we're not going to the community for a levy anytime soon. I mean, a referendum anytime soon. But if we were, what would we want them to know? Things like that. So at any point in time, and I'm not sure how often it gets refreshed, probably every year, or, if we ever needed to amend the budget, but just key performance indicators, right?
Mm-hmm.
So clearly not related to this topic, and I'll stop now, I promise, but those are just things on my mind.
I think you actually are correct. I think transparency, how measured, would be a dashboard. It would be a dashboard, or it would be a Mary budget at a glance, right? It's a 2-page budget that you produce with, and it's a fold out that just shows what we're planning for the year, what investments we're making. So yes, it would be a dashboard. A dashboard would be a great metric to actually measure that transparency. And you could talk to the community and see how many times people click on it and how many times people have questions and come and send them to the finance committee. There's lots of ways you could.
Yeah, I think dashboards are great, and the budget guide to the community. One of the key focuses is about how people learn. How do they understand? Of course, we're a school district, so that's what we think about, right? And so that visualization, like you could give people, 20 pages of data. You could give the numeric data. It's all there. We're being transparent. But if you can create that visualization that a person can connect to that says, oh, we're trending upward, we're trending downward. Like those are the takeaways that you want them to have. So that's that, connecting to how do people internalize, interpret the data, the KPIs, whatever metrics we deem to be important. But you need to present it in a way that they can quickly understand, comprehend, and then they're taking away that message. So that would be my recommendation is to think about communication from that perspective. We are transparent in that, lengthy reports are out there, but that doesn't mean it's in a format that helps people digest.
Great points. And also people like to benchmark against surrounding districts as well. And I think that's something that we ought to consider as well.
Right.
Could I ask for a clarification? I can't read it now with the document. But with that second point of the transparency, are you talking about the goal of January when you're going to, is this just a timetable for us, or is it like something that will be presented? I'm feeling like if you have transparency, communication, like through the dashboard, then the timeline would be January. It almost presents like we'll start being transparent in January 2022.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
So if I increase transparency?
Yeah. And so I think if we consider what the next meeting will be, the next meeting will be to write the SMART goal. And so this column
Okay.
about when is to cue up how you might write that SMART goal. So as you know, SMART goal needs to be measurable, attainable, time bound. And so that's that time bound piece. So, you may not actually write the goal in the same fashion, but it's a starting point to create that connection to the actual written SMART goal once you get there next meeting.
And
Does that-
because
does
I'm
that-
part of the because I'm part of the conversation, like I understand what you're all saying, but if someone else were to look at it, I just wanted just to be more clear for anyone else looking at it that wasn't part of the conversation.
Mhm.
I'll put it this way, the dashboard will take time to get developed, and
Mhm.
I guess this would be when we hope to roll it out, maybe?
Yeah, no, I like that idea a lot.
Is that better?
Yeah, I'm not trying to be difficult.
No. I think it's helping us for the next meeting, for sure.
And Chris, I was thinking of dashboards benchmarks as part of the dashboard. I'm curious why you put it in that third column. Like, what were you thinking about in that way?
Maybe academic return on investment. I don't know. When that's not going to happen overnight.
No.
But yeah, I'll put benchmarks in the first one. Second, sorry. No, I'm with you.
Okay. It's about it is 7:52. Do we want to take a break before we come together with the whole group? Are there any last minute thoughts, ideas, enhancements to our list of big ideas, the 3? Like, we probably could use a little break to stand up before we come together with the whole group.
No, I think like Chris said, I think it flows really well.
Mhm. Chris Wildman, since you're our spokesperson, is there anything else you need from the group before we close?
I got it. I can present this. This is good.
All right. We'll see you back in the large group meeting at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.